This video is brought to you by Nebula. Getting your first car is often one of the most liberating moments in your adolescent years. For the first time in your life, you can truly go where you want, when you want, uninhibited by the availability of public transport or the taxi of mum and dad. However, some worry that this freedom may be curtailed soon with the introduction of something called road pricing. Critics of such a policy argue that this is a way for the government to socially engineer how and when people drive, whereas proponents argue it's the only way to fix the ever-growing problem of how to maintain tax receipts with the ever-wider adoption of electric vehicles. So in this video, we're going to have a look into this, explaining why this is a problem and why the government may well conclude that road pricing is the only option. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. Now you might be wondering, what exactly is the issue with electric vehicles? They're better for the environment, and it's not like there isn't any tax paid on them. They're still subject to 20% VAT, as other vehicles are. And even if they do pay a little less in other taxes, why is that an issue? It encourages people to adopt vehicles that are better for the environment, after all. Well, the issue is that they don't just pay less tax, they pay virtually nothing compared to petrol and diesel cars. There are currently two main taxes that are paid by car drivers: vehicle excise duty and fuel duty. Vehicle excise duty is more commonly referred to as car tax, and is largely based on how much carbon dioxide the vehicle emits. Electric vehicles are currently exempt from this tax, although for the first time from April 2025, they won't be. Fuel duty is exactly what it says on the tin, a duty on fuel, such as petrol and diesel. Electric vehicles do not currently pay this, and there are no plans for them to, largely because there isn't really a way for them to do so for, well, obvious reasons. Between 2022 and 2023, vehicle excise duty brought in around £7.3 billion, and fuel duty brought in £25.1 billion. The thing is, this has decreased fairly significantly since 2019, with it back then bringing in around £28 billion. This is almost directly a result of the take-up of electric vehicles. In fact, the RAC Foundation predicts that in a worst-case scenario where electric car uptake is significant, the government could lose almost £10 billion from fuel duty per year. Considering that the new Labour government has already identified a £22 billion black hole in public finances, the last thing they probably want right now is another one. So how do they fix it? Well, there are a few potential options. The first potential solution is simply to bump up other taxes, such as income tax. However, this is faced with three problems. Firstly, some research suggests that this would have to be raised by as much as 6% by 2040, which is obviously a pretty massive amount, especially considering how high income tax already is. Second, income tax is paid by everyone, irrespective of car ownership or how much you use your car. Why is it fair to ask someone who's unable or unwilling to drive to subsidise those who do want to? And why is it fair that someone who drives a lot and causes congestion and more wear on the roads pays the same amount as someone who doesn't drive or drives very little, when holding income consistent? The short answer is, it isn't fair. Thirdly, it would hit the lowest earners the most. Essentially, people with money are more likely to buy new cars, and they'd be able to buy the cheap-to-run electric vehicles. And, well, anyone still driving a petrol or diesel car would not only have to pay more to run it, but also have to pay the increased income tax. So it's clear that this is a far from perfect solution. So what else could be done? Well, we could try to simply use the same system we use for petrol and diesel with electricity. After all, the current system seems the most fair. People who use the roads more and wear them down more purchase more fuel to do so. More fuel means more tax on that fuel. If you hardly drive, you hardly buy fuel and you hardly pay any tax. Everyone pays a fair amount. To do the same with electric vehicles, we'd have to put a fuel duty on the electricity used to charge cars. The problem here is that it's not actually that easy to be able to tell what electricity is being used for. Mike Williams, the Director of Business and International Tax at HM Treasury, said that in order to do this would require new infrastructure because there's no mechanism for any supplier to know if I'm using the washing machine or charging a car. So even if this system was preferable, it's just not practical. Luckily, there are a couple of other solutions available. The Tony Blair Institute, for instance, suggested that some may push for a cigarette tax approach. In effect, this means increasing the tax on petrol as electric car ownership increases to discourage its use. However, as they point out, this is just downright unfair to those lower earners who cannot afford a new electric vehicle. Not only this, but as long as electric car ownership increases, so will the tax on petrol cars. It's for this reason that the Tony Blair Institute states that any model that assumes the last petrol vehicle driver will pay £35 billion in taxation is doomed to fail. The last solution available then is road pricing. In effect, this is a charge linked to road usage. The more someone drives, the more tax they pay. This would be recorded via telematics, the same technology used by black boxes that some people have with their insurer. In fact, Professor Phil Goodwin, a senior fellow at the Foundation for Integrated Transport, has even stated that you could have the same box for both tax and insurance. The advantage here is that people who cause the wear on the roads can be charged more, and people who drive in rush hour can be taxed more than those who avoid it. The government would be able to encourage and discourage certain driving behaviours by increasing and decreasing the amount of tax on certain driving attributes. Obviously, this is something that is already kind of done with insurance through black boxes. The thing is, all the criticisms people have of black boxes are going to be valid with the road pricing model. In fact, potentially even more so. After all, the government would be tracking your every move, and unlike black boxes, as long as you drive a car, this would be mandatory. And even if the government initially promises that this data will only be used to track how far you drive and tax you accordingly, they easily have the ability to collect more data going forward. Unfortunately though, all the other solutions seem basically unworkable, and there's a good chance that the Labour government will have to implement this solution, if not at the next budget, at some point in the next few years. Now, that's not everything. We have a new series called WTF USA, and you can watch the trailer for that right now.
Look, as British people, we often cast a wary eye at our friends across the Atlantic. But honestly, the last few months have been especially wild. We've seen Biden bail from the race after a terrible debate.
My fellow Americans.
The red-blue divide making way for lurid green. Trump accusing Kamala of changing her race. Vance getting accused of couches, endless memes about coconut trees, and endless arguments over crowd sizes.
This weird obsession with crowd sizes.
Obama making a joke, Trump talking about Biden like an ex he misses, RFK Jr. potentially having worms in his brain, before admitting to burying a bear in Central Park. Oh, and an assassination attempt that we all kind of forgot about because of all of the other chaos. I mean, honestly, WTF USA. The thing is though, while it might be tempting to just roll your eyes at these shenanigans, these aren't just meme-worthy moments. And you know I'm serious, because I've not stood up in a video since COVID. But these incidents actually pose important questions, like how much does the Gen Z vote matter this time round? How important will online campaigning and social media prove to be? What impact do running mates have? Okay, I don't have words for that one. These are the kinds of things we'll be explaining in our new Nebula original series, What to Follow USA, only on Nebula. Each week, we'll take the moments that have been dominating internet discourse and explaining the true politics under the hood. Look at me pandering to the American audience. We'll be releasing new episodes of What to Follow every Friday through to the election. The fact that it's on Nebula means we've been able to take more risks with this series. The tone and attitude of the show isn't what you'd expect from TLDR. I'm not sure we've talked about fucking couches on YouTube before, but the journalism and reporting is exactly the standard you'd expect. Nebula support also means that we can do things differently, create additional content for you, and tackle topics that the YouTube algorithm just wouldn't normally allow for. It's not just this new series on Nebula either though. There's also incredible originals on the platform like Modern Conflicts from Real Life Law, or the upcoming documentary from Tom Nicholas, Boomers, which takes a provocative look at the lives and legacy of the baby boom generation. Plus, we also post all of our normal content on Nebula ad-free, and often before it ends up on YouTube. If you want to check all of that out, plus WTF USA, then head to go.nebula.tv/WTF, or click the link in the description. That way, you can pick up an annual Nebula subscription for a huge 40% off. We're really happy with how this new series has turned out, so please do give the series a look. We'd really appreciate it.